You become like water, taking any shape it is given, adapting to any circumstance it faces. You absorb the shock, but you do not break. And here within you, a quiet power emerges. Because you are no longer fighting life, you are flowing with it. And the more you align with life, the stronger you become. Not because you control circumstances, but because you no longer need to. Saying, yes, this is my fate and I will love it. This alone is enough to begin your journey toward becoming untouchable. The strength of solitude. To be untouchable, you must learn to walk alone. Not because you reject people, but because you refuse to depend on them for your inner stability. Most people fear solitude. They seek distractions, noise, validation, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. But the truly strong find power in their own company. Solitude is where you sharpen your thoughts, build your mindset, and develop resilience. It is where you discover who you are without the influence of others. A warrior does not train in a crowd. He sharpens his sword in silence. Train yourself to be comfortable alone. Spend time in deep thought, in self-reflection, in stillness. This is where you become untouchable, because the man who is content with himself needs nothing from the world, and when you reach that level, nothing can break you. Not rejection, not loneliness, not even loss. You stand strong, not because you have people around you, but because you have yourself. And in that, my friend, lies true power. Mastering your emotions lies true power. But this power is not a roaring flame easily extinguished by the winds of circumstance. It is the deep, steady heat of the forge, transforming base metal into resilient steel. And the crucible where this transformation occurs, your own emotional landscape. Mastering your emotions is not the act of a tyrant suppressing a rebellion within, nor is it the coldness of stone. It is the art of the strategist observing the battlefield from the high tower, understanding the terrain, the forces at play, the likely outcomes, and then issuing precise commands. Think of your emotions not as enemies to be vanquished, nor as masters to be obeyed blindly, but as powerful currents within a vast internal sea. Fear, anger, desire, joy, these are not inherently destructive. Fear can sharpen your senses to genuine danger. Anger can fuel righteous action against injustice. Desire can drive creation. Joy can illuminate your path. The poison lies not in the current itself, but in being swept away by it, drowned in its turbulence, lost to its directionless fury. The untouchable strategist does not deny the sea. They learn to navigate it. They build a sturdy vessel, their reason, and develop the skill to read the winds and tides. When insult strikes, when betrayal cuts deep, when desire whispers seductively, the untouchable does not react. They pause. They retreat, not in fear, but to that inner vantage point, the high tower of the self. From there, they observe the storm gathering within. They see the heat of anger rising, the cold clutch of fear tightening, the seductive pull of want. They name it. This is anger. This is fear. This is craving. This simple act of observation, this detachment creates a space, a vital, sacred space between the stimulus and your response. In that space lies your freedom. In that space lies your power to choose. Machiavelli, often misunderstood as advocating pure ruthlessness, understood this profoundly. He spoke not of being emotionless, but of the prince mastering his passions so they did not cloud his judgment or dictate unwise action. He knew that a ruler swayed by sudden rage or crippled by fear becomes predictable, manipulable, vulnerable. Your inner kingdom is no different. The storms of emotion make you reactive, impulsive, easily led astray by others or by your own turbulent heart. They drain your energy, distort your perception, and leave you exposed. True mastery is not suppression, it is transformation. It is channeling the raw energy of anger into focused determination. It is transmuting the paralyzing energy of fear into meticulous preparation. It is harnessing the restless energy of desire into disciplined pursuit. It requires looking inward with unflinching honesty, acknowledging the shadow as well as the light. What weaknesses do your emotions exploit? What ancient wounds do they reopen? The untouchable strategist maps their own vulnerabilities with the same cold precision they would use to survey an enemy's fortifications. Only then can they be fortified. This mastery demands relentless practice. It is the daily discipline of the mind. When irritation flares at a minor inconvenience, pause, breathe. Observe the irritation like a curious scientist observing a phenomenon. Where does it sit in your body? What thoughts fuel it? Does it truly serve you to react? When disappointment threatens to pull you under, step back onto your inner tower. Acknowledge the pain, yes, feel its weight, but refuse to let it dictate your next move. Ask, what action now aligns with my strength, my purpose? This is not avoidance, it is conscious direction. Remember, the world will constantly test this mastery. People will provoke you, seeking a reaction. Losses will tempt you towards despair. Success might lure you into arrogance. The untouchable stands firm, not because they feel nothing, but because they have made their inner citadel impregnable to emotional siege. They understand that every surge of feeling is information, perhaps energy, but never the commander. The commander resides in the quiet center, the observing mind, the unwavering will. This is the foundation upon which true, unassailable power is built. The power that flows not from controlling others, but from the absolute sovereignty over your own inner realm. When your emotions become servants to your reason and aligned with your purpose, not masters of your chaos, you move through the world with a calm authority that deflects pettiness and disarms hostility. You become a force that cannot be easily swayed, disturbed, or diminished by the shifting sands of external events or the turbulence within others. This calm authority, this inner sovereignty, does not exist in a vacuum. It is forged not only in mastering the internal currents, but in mastering how you perceive the external world itself. For the greatest vulnerability often lies not in what happens, but in the lens through which we interpret it. The untouchable strategist understands that reality is, in many ways, negotiable, not because they deny facts, but because they ruthlessly discipline their perception of those facts. They wield their focus like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting away the distorting fat of assumption, bias, and emotional reactivity to reveal the underlying structure of events. Most stumble through life viewing the world through a glass darkly, smudged by past hurts, warped by wishful thinking, or clouded by fear. They see insult where none was intended, betrayal in simple disagreement, catastrophe in minor setbacks. They react not to the event itself, but to the terrifying shadow their own mind casts upon it. This is the fertile ground where disturbance takes root. The untouchable shatters this glass. They cultivate the observer's mind, a stance of detached, almost clinical, curiosity towards everything that unfolds, especially adversity. Consider the storm. The ordinary person sees only chaos, destruction, a personal affront to their plans. They rail against the wind, curse the rain, and feel victimized. The strategist, the untouchable, sees the same storm with different eyes. They note the wind's direction and force, gauging its potential for harm or perhaps for driving their ship forward if harnessed. They observe the rain's intensity, assessing its duration and impact. They see patterns, probabilities, raw power moving according to immutable laws. They ask, what does this reveal? What opportunities, however harsh, does it present? What must I do? They perceive the storm not as a malevolent actor, but as a phenomenon to be understood and navigated. This shift is revolutionary. Machiavelli's genius lay partly in this cold-eyed realism. He stripped away the comforting veils of morality and divine right that obscured the brutal mechanics of power. He urged the prince to see men as they are, not as we wish them to be, capable of self-interest, deception, and violence, as well as loyalty and courage. This is not cynicism for its own sake. It is the essential foundation of effective action. To become untouchable, you must apply this same ruthless clarity to your own life. See your colleagues, your rivals, your friends, even your family with this unflinching gaze. Understand their motivations, their weaknesses, their predictable patterns. See situations stripped of your hopes and fears. See the leverage points, the potential pitfalls, the hidden currents beneath the surface calm. This discipline of perception requires constant vigilance against the mind's lazy tendencies. The rush to judgment, the confirmation bias seeking evidence for existing fears, the catastrophizing that turns a stumble into an abyss. When faced with a setback, the untouchable pauses the internal narrative. They interrogate their own interpretation. Is this truly an attack or merely indifference? Is this failure final or merely a step? What evidence do I actually have? They seek multiple perspectives, playing devil's advocate against their own initial reactions. They ask, how would my most detached, strategic self view this? This is not about becoming cold or inhuman. It is about achieving a profound objectivity that allows for clearer,